So we have all heard some things about dementia that may have us scratching our heads, wondering if it's actually true or if it's just a myth. Take a few seconds to think about some things that you've heard about dementia that you think might not be true. And we're going to look at some of the more common myths about dementia. So I just want you to just think about for a minute or second or two, think about something that you think you're not sure whether it's true or not. Dementia is not strictly genetic. Genetics is often a question that comes up around Alzheimer's disease. Familial Alzheimer's disease, sometimes referred to as autosomal dominant Alzheimer's disease, is genetic, but this accounts for less than 5% of all cases diagnosed. This gene tends to cause young onset Alzheimer's disease, primarily diagnosed between the ages of 50 and 60, but it can be earlier. Sometimes people are concerned about a family history of Alzheimer's disease when in fact they have a family history of dementia due to different causes like cardiovascular disease, diabetes, or hypertension. This is why reducing our risk of these diseases also decreases our overall risk of developing dementia. It's not a natural part of aging. I often hear people say, well, everyone gets dementia if you live long enough, but this just is not true. Although age is the most significant risk factor for developing dementia, it's not natural to develop dementia as we get older. Dementia is caused by diseases that damage the brain. While age does increase the risk of dementia, as it does our risk of developing certain cancers, osteoporosis, arthritis, and so on, many people live to be very old with no signs of dementia. And while rare, individuals in their 30s and 40s can also develop dementia. So the myth that this is an old person's disease is also untrue. And dementia is not preventable or curable. Currently, around the world, there are research studies looking into the causes of various types of dementia. But because their exact cause is still unknown, we do not yet know how to prevent it. Research does indicate that there are a number of risk factors other than age and genetics that could put people at higher risk of developing dementia, such as diabetes, hypertension, obesity, poor nutrition, smoking, social isolation, and so on. So this is why we tend to speak about risk reduction as opposed to prevention. Dementia also does not mean that the person will no longer have a meaningful life. You may have seen Jim Mann's story on our website. If you've not seen the Jim story video yet, I encourage you to Google Jim's story along with the word dementia. You'll see it come up linked to dementia-friendly communities. Jim and many, many others contribute in meaningful ways to their family or community after a diagnosis of dementia. People living with dementia have served on both the provincial and national Alzheimer's Society's boards of directors, have worked with us as passionate advocates for a dementia strategy in BC. They've served as honorees for our annual Walk for Alzheimer's, or have spoken candidly to their own communities about living with dementia as a way of battling stigma. Dementia does not mean that the person with dementia will become aggressive. While some people with dementia do react or respond to triggers in ways that may seem aggressive, it's important to acknowledge that not everyone with dementia becomes violent. The more we can learn about the triggers of responsive or reactive behaviors and how to adjust our own responses, the more likely our interactions will be more positive in nature. We do discuss this in more depth in our Understanding Behaviors session. And lastly, dementia does not mean that the person will no longer understand what's going on around them. There are two language areas in the brain, one responsible for language in and one responsible for language out. That is, hearing and understanding language and speaking language. Not everyone with dementia experience deficits in both areas, so they may be able to understand what's being said around them and about them, even if they have difficulty producing a response. This is covered in more detail in our Understanding Communication session, but the main message is that it's important not to talk about a person with dementia in front of them like they are not there. Include them in conversations as much as possible.